So just remind people, which I'll make sure I do myself, turn your phones off. I think the plan for this session is Pádraig's going to talk about 30 minutes or so and then have some questions and answers. So my name is Joe Mooney from the Bristol Radical History group in Dublin and also Anti-Fascist Action and the Dublin Community Against Racism. So unfortunately this is a topic I do know a bit about for all the wrong reasons. Pádraig is the author of 8 books on modern Irish history, including the Irish Times bestseller, Forced Disappearances in Ireland, 1798 to 1998. His most recent book, Burn Them Out, A History of Fascism and the Far Right in Ireland, was published earlier this month, and I believe it's number 6 in the Irish bestsellers today, so, which is incredible for a book like this. It's groundbreaking. It's the first comprehensive history of right-wing extremism and street violence in Ireland. And while it is timely and very relevant, it is very timely and unfortunately very relevant. If this had been published 5 years ago, it would have been a very welcome history book. Now it's part history and part current affairs, unfortunately. Over the past number of years, Ireland has witnessed an unprecedented escalation of anti-immigration protests, a related mainstreaming of racist attitudes, and the emergence of far-right agitators as political figureheads. While some are disguising their agenda as anti-government or just a common-sense approach, as they say, others are openly identifying themselves as fascists, and we even have some prominent Hitler apologists, previously the preserve of the historic. This is not something anyone ever really associated with Ireland, and certainly as long-time anti-racist and anti-fascists will testify, not something we envision taking hold so swiftly. For my generation of Irish political activists, as militant anti-fascists, there were occasional threats through the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. This ranged from the skinhead-related blood and honour music scene, which I have here, attempts to establish a Nazi skinhead football firm, efforts by European fascists to establish Irish links, a fascist-promoted immigration control platform, keyboard warriors associated with Stormfront and the like, who occasionally try to have real-world meetups, but in all these cases, their efforts were, sometimes literally knocked on the head. And then, as long as I can remember, Irish people always, and Mary talked just earlier about the solidarity with the miners, we're going to talk later on about the solidarity with anti-apartheid. As long as I can remember, Irish people always prided themselves on not being racist. From trade unionists, political activists, right through the most apolitical people. Most everyone could reassure you with pride that the Irish were the most unracist people on the planet. Now, unfortunately, what we're probably finding out now is that's because we had nobody to be racist against in that country. But we shouldn't be surprised because, as Pádraig's talk is going to explain, he's going to expose a foundation that was always there. And of course, let's not forget, Ireland is a partition country, and as James Connolly predicted, this created a carnival reaction, north and south, with a conservative Catholic stranglehold on the cultural, social and political affairs of the 26 counties, and up in the 6 counties, a sectarian orange stabling with the violent supremacist ideology of Ulster loyalism as an always present threat. One of our establishment political parties, Fine Gael, almost seemingly perpetually in government, has its roots in the counter-revolution of the 1920s and the openly fascist blue shirt movement of the 1930s. Pádraig will be covering these in great details, and his book really nails this aspect of the history down perfectly and addresses the people who are trying to whitewash this shameful past. And a startling fact that was pointed out by Pádraig in the book, which I never actually realised, is that the membership of the blue shirts in Ireland, compared to the Irish population at the time, made them proportionally more numerically successful than any of their British or European counterparts. And that's quite startling to be realised. And of course, institutional racism against the Irish traveller population has often been overlooked as a big aspect of Ireland in the 20th century. So one of the most striking aspects of the current far right in Ireland is, despite their self-identification as Irish patriots, is their willingness to align themselves with sectarian orders of the UBF in Ulster and the races of the various British fascist parties and individuals such as Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson. But again, this is not without precedent, and Pádraig is going to detail Irish fascists have always displayed a willingness to jump into bed with any other bigots that would happen. So Pádraig's research is important to help with some of Ireland's current difficulties in the context. It has been absolutely eye-opening. And I think it makes us question as Irish people that maybe we've been too comfortable in thinking that it could never happen to us. So, Pádraig.
Thanks very much, Joe. Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for coming. Moriv, Milo Mahagriv as Optvor Go Ruairc, and given the content of the last talk, if there's anyone Welsh in the audience, Bori da. Any Welsh people know? Siarad Cymraeg, dim, o ble ydych chi'n dod? Da iawn, desgwr Cymraeg ydw gen hyd dipyn bach o Gachelig. But if we give the talk in Welsh, only you and I are going to benefit from it. But anyway, and thanks very much to Ralph for turning up as well, who hosted me last night. So look, I'm going to try and race through 100 years of fascism and the far right in Ireland in half an hour. These are only the cover notes. We can go more in depth. I want to leave as much time as possible for questions afterwards. So as soon as fascism raises its ugly head with Mussolini in Rome, the March in Rome in October of 22. At that time, Ireland was in political turmoil. We had just had the Irish War of Independence. We were in the middle of the Irish Civil War, and fascists and fascism popped up in Ireland. It was a tiny Italian group, the Fascisti di Dublino di Michelangelo, who I'm not going to go into here. They don't have a huge street presence. The first group to have a major attempt at influencing Irish politics was organised by this woman, an English woman, Rotha Linton Orman. And this is her group's logo. They were called the British Fascisti, later changed to the British Fascists to make them sound more English. Rotha Linton Orman was a former suffragette. She had been an ambulance driver during the First World War. She was one of the founding members of the Girl Scouts, not to be confused with the Girl Guides. She was big into gender equality and stuff. Unfortunately, she was also very big into fascism. And in May of 1923, her group established one of its first branches in Dublin. Now, at that time, you had just had the Anglo-Irish War, or as we call it, the War of Independence, and you would have had the pro-British, the loyalist populations from regional areas like Cork, from Limerick, would have fled from those regional areas into Dublin, which had been the second city of the empire, and they sought refuge there, and it's amongst them. And it's amongst former RIC constables, the British police force in Ireland. It's amongst former members of the British Army, former Black and Tans, that this group takes hold. And what were their activities? Well, this is them on the march in Dublin, Armistice Day. Long before we had James McLean and rows about the poppy in Irish politics, Armistice Day has always been, Remembrance Sunday has always been a flashpoint in Ireland because of the history of the British Army in Ireland. And obviously many Irishmen served in the British Army, both in Ireland and overseas. But their main activities were sending hate mail to Irish Jews. We had a tiny Jewish population, mostly Russian immigrants who had fled Tsarist pogroms, and they were based in Cork, in Limerick and in Belfast. They were very well integrated into Irish community, but they used to get hate mail from these guys, the British Fascisti. The British Fascisti would republish the protocols of the Elders of Zion and other anti-Semitic nonsense, and Remembrance Day parades, as you can see here. And long before the Channel 4 presenter John Snow came up with the phrase poppy fascism, they campaigned for Remembrance Sunday to be renamed Fascist Sunday, because they saw fascism as a form of patriotism. Now, marching through the middle of Dublin in 1922 to 1934, 1923 to 34, waving the British Union flag in the aftermath of the Anglo-Irish War was not going to win you a lot of supporters, particularly amongst the IRA, who would have been very strong at the time. And there was frequent rioting between Irish Republicans and these loyalist British fascisti. An IRA leader, George Gilmore, who later was involved in the Republican Congress and supported Republicans in Spain when Franco had his coup, he was a Protestant IRA leader from Dublin, and he was taken to court for stabbing two members of the British Fascisti in Dublin in 1927, and the IRA also burnt down the British fascistes' headquarters. So at that time, they later had a dalliance with Nazi Germany, but at that time the IRA was solidly anti-fascist. The British fascisti, of course, were organised in Britain as well, as the name implies, and one of their key organisers who was in charge of their London unit was this guy, General Ormond Winter. If any of you have seen the very entertaining but historically inaccurate movie Michael Collins, he's a character in that. He was a real person. He was former head of British intelligence in Ireland during the Anglo-Irish War. Chief organiser of the British fascisti in London. He stockpiled illegal arms, munitions and explosives, things like Lewis and machine guns and so on, and Vickers machine guns. And he was planning to have basically a military coup and to fight against the Reds. He used to lead his British fascists down to Speaker's Corner and harass anyone who was talking about socialism and so on. He had previously killed a 14-year-old boy, Sidney Hawkins, in Bedford in 1904. He beat him to death with an oar after an incident involving a rowing boat. Sadly, a lot of paedophiles and child killers turn up in my research into the far right. I swear I am not going looking for these people. They happen to be there. They turn up. Here's another one of them. William Joyce, Lord Haw Haw. You've heard of him? Yeah. Haw Haw was reared in County Galway, or Galway City, in the west of Ireland. He was a spy for the British Army in Galway during the Anglo-Irish War. He was a key member of the British fascisti. He led their I squad, their intelligence squad, who were their kind of most vicious boot boys. Another paedophile, after he fled Ireland when the IRA were attempting to assassinate him, he got a job as a school teacher in England, and though he was married at the time, he had an affair with, affair is probably the wrong word because it would be statutory rape, a 15-year-old pupil of his. He, of course, did Nazi broadcasts in World War II, and he was hanged after the war for treason. Now, a fascinating thing about Haw Haw is you can see the scar on his face running from his cheek up to his ear. Haw Haw would always say to people that he had gotten this from a male Jewish communist who attacked him when he was protecting one of Oswald Mosley's British Union of Fascist meetings. However, his first wife, Heather, talking to his biographer Colin Holmes, admitted that Haw Haw had actually been attacked by an Irish woman. So this happened in 1924 in Lambeth, when as a member of the British fascisti, he was protecting a Conservative Party meeting. The IRA knew who he was. The local Irish Republican community and trade unionists had been organised, went to challenge the fascists. They were singing Republican songs, and some Irish woman, probably a member of the IRA or Cumann na Món, its female auxiliary, went up and slashed him in the face with the knife. So fair play to her. She was somebody's granny. I like to imagine, you know, the war correspondent and report Jake Hanrahan. I always joke with him that it was probably his granny that did it. But anyway, that's Haw Haw. Mosley, British Union of Fascists. We've all seen the Peaky Blinders, and we've seen Cillian Murphy and Benjamin Zephaniah and all the other actors in it. Tom Vaughan Lawler being brilliant in it. Mosley, of course, organises in Britain. Now, in fairness to Oswald Mosley, if you can use such a phrase, he had more of an understanding of the dynamics and intricacies of Irish politics than the average British far-right conservative Tory figure. So when he decided to organise in Ireland, he knew that, I mean, if we go back to Mosley, he had been elected as the youngest member who took their seat. There were others younger who didn't from Sinn Féin, but he was the youngest member of Parliament in the 1918 election. He was elected as a Conservative. He crossed the floor. He left the British Conservative Party over what the British Army and the Black and Tans were doing in Ireland. And it's not because Mosley supported the idea of Irish independence or Irish republicanism or anything like that. It's because Mosley had the idea, as quoted in Monty Python, that democracy and compassion have always been the hallmarks of the British Empire and the British Army. And Mosley had that idea, and he saw what was happening in Ireland as bringing shame upon the British Army's reputation. So he leaves the Conservative Party. He crosses the floor to Labour. He later falls out with Labour, forms the New Party, and later again the British Union of Fascists. So he's more aware of Ireland than most of the British far-right or fascist scene. So he knows that coming to Belfast or coming to Ireland with the British Union, those words are going to be politically charged in Ireland. So he organises a puppet group, a sock puppet group really. This is their logo. You can see the red hand of Ulster, UF instead of BUF, and this is the Ulster Fascists. And Mosley's dream is to unite Green Catholic nationalists and Orange Protestant loyalists through their combined hatred of Jewish people and their combined hatred of foreigners and their combined love of fascism. And he wants a united Ireland within the British Empire with him as the head of a fascist British Empire. That's Mosley's dream. Now, this does not fly in Ireland because he gets opposition from the Irish left, Republicans, Socialists, trade unionists, regardless of religion. Thankfully, people were there to organise against them. A far more successful fascist movement, as Joe mentioned in his kind introduction, was this crowd, Fine Gael, as we say in Gaelic, the United Ireland Party, the Blue Shirts. Now, I do have a PhD in history. I do not work in an academic university, but Irish academics will say that this group, Fine Gael, are not fascists. They will say they are proto-fascist. They will say they are para-fascist. They will say they are quasi-fascist, closet-fascist, any prefix. I can't believe it's not fascist, 50% less fascist. Any prefix they can come up with, they will apply to this group. Now, the Fine Gael party is founded in 1933 by this man here, General Owen O'Duffy. Fascinating figure. Now, Fine Gael is one of the two parties they're kind of a centre-right party today. They are part of the Irish government. It's very important to say that the last leader of Fine Gael, Leo Varadkar, was an openly gay man of mixed Indian and Irish heritage. So the party today is not fascist. But when it was founded, it absolutely was. It was a huge, incredibly successful party. It was the main opposition party, and it comes out of the Michael Collins pro-treaty tradition in Irish politics. Their level of violence, this is a blue shirt funeral of a blue shirt who'd been killed by the Irish police on Garda Síochána. The level of violence was incredible. It dwarfed anything that Mosley's British Union of Fascists got up to. You're talking about gun battles with the police, gun battles with the IRA. They kill one IRA volunteer. The IRA kill, in reprisal, 3 blue shirts, one of whom they shoot dead, one of whom they beat to death, and the third one they kill with a sledgehammer. So that's how brutal the violence was. Huge amounts of street violence and rioting. The homes of 2 government MPs were burned down by these blue shirt fascists. Homes of opponents, Charlotte Despard, great suffragette, great left-wing supporter of Irish republicanism and supporter of the Spanish Republic during the Spanish Civil War. Her home was attacked by them as well. The Communist Party of Ireland, at the time it called itself the Revolutionary Workers Group, their headquarters was burnt down by these fascists, and as I said, they murdered an IRA volunteer as well. So if we compare them, if we put up a scorecard or a butcher's bill, this is like Ireland versus England in a soccer match that neither of us wants to win. Mosley's Black Shirts had no members of Parliament. Mosley had lost his seat at that time. As far as I'm aware, and I'm open to correction, they did not kill any of their opponents. None of them were killed by their opponents. They didn't organise any armed coup, and they did not take part in the Spanish Civil War. Compare that to Owen O'Duffy's Blue Shirts, 58 members of Parliament in an assembly of about 140 seats. They were a huge political force. They had hundreds of county and local councillors. They killed 1 IRA volunteer. 3 of them were killed by the IRA, 1 by the Irish police. They attempted 2 armed coups, and they did end up fighting in the Spanish Civil War. Thankfully, their military record wasn't very good. They marched onto the battlefield. In their biggest battle, they encountered a group of fascists, phalangists, I think, from the Canary Islands. The phalangists heard people speaking English in Irish accents, assumed they were the international brigades, opened fire, and there was this blue on blue, if you'll pardon the pun, friendly fire incident. 3 blue shirts were killed, and O'Duffy's men killed 12 of the Spanish fascists. So critical support on O'Duffy for killing 12 Spanish fascists. Thankfully, as I mentioned, Irishmen were on the battlefield in the Republican side, fighting for democracy, fighting for the Spanish Republic. And this is a meeting from, I think it's Hyde Park in London, and this is a mixture of London Irish and Irish Republicans, some of whom fought in Spain. And you can see the banner here: Irish Republicans greet Spanish Republicans, smash all imperialisms. So thankfully, Frank Ryan and Bob Hilliard, who I saw there's a new book on sale about outside, you know, they redeemed Ireland's honour by fighting against these fascists and have a much better fighting record. Many of them were killed in Madrid, Jarama, the Ebro, all these famous battles. I'm going to race through World War II, and we can ask questions if you want later about it. There's a number of fascist groups in Ireland during World War II. Elements of the IRA were also willing to collaborate with Nazi Germany, this idea that my enemy's enemy is my friend. But post-World War II, the IRA returned to their solid anti-fascist roots. This guy comes along in the 1950s. This is Gearóid Ó Ruairc, who was from Belfast. He was an Irish language activist, moved down from Belfast to Dublin, and joined the Irish language group Conradh na Gaeilge. Now, Conradh na Gaeilge, the Gaelic League, is a non-political group. It has people from the left, from the right, Catholic, Protestant, atheist. They don't care once you are interested in the Irish language. He gets involved in it and he's kicked out. He's told he's too political. So because he's preaching far-right ideas, he's actually planning that if the Nazis invade Ireland, he is going to lead a Nazi fifth column to fight the Irish army to support the Nazis. So when he gets kicked out, he has the totally reasonable position of, fine, I'm going to start a Gaelic-speaking Hitler Youth. And he calls his movement, this is their logo, Altri na Hasairi, or Altri na Hasairiga, depending on your dialect, and it means the architects of the resurrection, which is a name scary as fuck. They also are pretty successful in getting people onto the streets. They succeed in getting, I think, about 9 local councillors elected, and this guy wants to double down on Hitler. Hitler wanted a 1,000-year Reich. He, Gearóid Ó Ruairc, wanted a 2,000-year-long Irish-speaking galactic empire. So he was really off the wall. Thankfully, a lot of these guys, they all have a Führer complex. They love Führer fights. They fight with each other over leadership. His movement falls apart in the late 50s, but keeps publishing its magazine up until the 1970s. British politics, of course, influences Irish politics because of the North and because of partition, as Joe mentioned. And when the National Front sets up in Britain, they, of course, have branches in Ireland. And there is a very strong link between fascism in the North, in Ulster, in Northern Ireland, whatever you want to call it, and the BNP and the National Front and all those far-right types. So you will see their stickers and stuff when you go to Belfast. Loyalism basically does the opposite of republicanism. Loyalism through the 20s up until World War II is solidly interested in racist and fascist ideas. During World War II, they're 100% behind the British war effort. Post-World War II, when the Troubles break out in the 60s, then they go back to these far-right ideas and so on. Combat 18, it's not just political support, it's not just the National Front and the BNP setting up groups in Belfast, you have Combat 18 as well. So that neo-Nazi terrorist group is sending money, is sending guns, is sending explosives, and handguns and stuff were legal in Britain at a time that they were illegal in the North. So they were smuggling all of those over. And you will see their graffiti in the north of Ireland in loyalist areas. And this is the grave of the IRA cemetery in Milltown in Belfast. You can see the name there, Bobby Sands and Joe MacDonald, who both died on the H blocks in 1981, and it's been graffitied by Combat 18. Sadly, this is a site that, and I'm not saying there are, in fairness, there are loyalists, the late David Irvine and his Progressive Unionist Party. There were always loyalists who were willing to challenge these people and say, we want nothing to do with this. But sadly, this happens occasionally, that you will see alongside loyalist murals in Belfast and loyalist flags and the British Union flag, you will see swastikas go up. This will happen in places like East Belfast. This will happen in Portrush, in Carrickfergus, any loyalist enclave. And there are obviously loyalists there who are unhappy about it, but it does happen. the American Confederate flag, or swastikas, and really weird. It's not just a standard bought off eBay swastika. This one is like from the Danzig unit of the SS, and this one is the Reichsführer banner. It's Hitler's personal flag. They're not just happy with any old swastika, they have to get the fancy ones. 12th of July bonfires are essentially a hate fest, and I'm an atheist. I have no problem with people practicing their religion, be they Catholic, Protestant, dissent or whatever, but the kind of stuff that happens at 12th of July bonfires, you can see the slogans: foreigners out. Scott Sinclair loves bananas. Who was Scott Sinclair? He's still around. He was a black soccer player who played for Glasgow Celtic. So, and they've drawn him as a monkey. You know, if this isn't racist, what is? And you can see Nazi salutes at these bonfires as well. And Jake Hanrahan, who I mentioned earlier, was there reporting, and he's from an Irish background but has an English accent, and he was there reporting on one of these bonfires, and there was a unionist candidate whose poster was being burned alongside the Sinn Féin and whatever posters, and he said, "Why are you burning her poster? She's a unionist." And they went, "Yeah, but she's Chinese." So that's the mentality you're dealing with. Politicians, like this is on the right, you have Michelle O'Neill, and on the left you have Naomi Long, who will be kind of a liberal unionist, the Alliance Party candidate, both being hanged in effigy. This is misogynistic, this is a hate crime in my opinion, but in the opinion of the Police Service of Northern Ireland / RUC, this is orange culture. Now if you compare, this is, and apologies, but I have to show this stuff. This is Grenfell Tower being burnt in effigy on Guy Fawkes night. And you can see images of Muslim people being burnt in it, in their hijabs and niqabs and so on. So when this was done in London, it was investigated by the police and prosecuted as a hate crime. When this kind of stuff happens in Belfast, the police ignore it, proving that Margaret Thatcher was wrong and Northern Ireland is not quite as British as Finchley. These guys, maybe they're saying their heart goes out to us. Personally, I think they're Nazis. These are members of the Royal Irish Regiment of the British Army serving in Afghanistan, giving Nazi salutes in front of the British Union flag and the Northern Ireland Six Counties flag. To bring it up to date, from 1991 onwards, we have had a very successful anti-fascist group in Ireland called Anti-Fascist Action Ireland. This is their logo. And they were extremely successful in the 90s, in the early 2000s, in combating these people, keeping them off the streets, infiltrating their groups, and so on. During the Celtic Tiger era of the 2000s, it was the first time Ireland's greatest export was always people, and there's huge Irish communities in Manchester and London, and I'm sure here in Bristol, everywhere. It was the first time that we had immigration coming into Ireland, and the far right started to emerge. Again, we didn't have an empire, we didn't have a Windrush generation, but you had people, economic migrants, you had people fleeing climate change, you had refugees, people fleeing war in the Middle East, and so on coming in. Pegida, if you remember them, Tommy Robinson and Anne-Marie Waters, remember her? Yeah. Born in Dublin, but has declared that she is proudly and resolutely British. They attempted to set up an Irish branch of Pegida at the site they chose for their launch was the General Post Office, the GPO in Dublin. And this is, in England, people tell you they were at the 1966 World Cup, or their dad was. In Ireland, people tell you their grandfather was in the GPO in 1916. It is hugely influential. It is the keystone of Irish politics. So that's where they chose for their launch. They did not get to have their lunch because there were about 5,000 anti-fascists on the streets there ready to fight them, and there was some fisticuffs. You're talking about trade unionists, Irish language activists, Republicans, socialists, Muslim immigrants, all classes of people were there to fight back against them, and they didn't get to have their launch. That was in 2015. But what happens then is the COVID pandemic. And Ireland had a very severe lockdown, and basically this unites the Irish right. All of the Holocaust deniers, the closet neo-Nazis, the 5G conspiracy theorists, the anti-vaxxers, the religious fundamentalists, all got together behind the COVID denial movement, basically. And you can see here clashes between the anti-fascists on the left and the far right on the right. See the police standing by, doing fuck all. It's interesting as well that Ireland is one of the few countries in Europe where you will see both the anti-fascist and the fascists flying the national flag. You know, you don't see too many anti-fascists in Britain who will turn up waving the Union Jack or the George's Cross when campaigning against the far right. But in Ireland, that's how it happens, and we're not going to surrender our flag and our heritage to them. One of the most extreme groups is the National Party. You can see them here marching down the main street in Dublin as part of an anti-immigrant, anti-refugee protest, again with the national flag, the Irish tricolour. And you've kind of got the respectable face of the National Party in the middle, but who's on the fringes? We've got these guys in balaclavas. We've got this guy in tactical gear with a radio. They have a severe, extreme, quasi-paramilitary element as well. Their leader is this guy, Justin Barrett, known in Ireland as Littler, because he's about 4.5 foot tall. Justin Barrett leads the party, but is too controversial. He's hurting them at the polls, and there is a move to oust him as party leader in 2023. And this, thankfully, again, these people love a Führer fight, this results in a split in the party. And when the party splits, Justin Barrett is concerned about the party's gold reserve, because these people, being lunatic conspiracy theorists, happen to have €400,000 in gold bullion bars in a private security vault in South Dublin. And when the party splits, Justin Barrett can't get access to it, so what's he do? He calls the cops. And it turns out that €40,000 of that gold bars belongs to the party. The other 360,000 belongs to party members. So the cheek of these people going around claiming to represent the Irish working class when they have tons of gold hidden in a private vault in the most expensive area of Dublin. I don't know about you people, maybe you all, I don't know, wash your gold bars every evening along with your teacups. The only piece of gold I have is a wedding ring, and that's all the piece of gold I want. But the party splits over this issue, and this is currently, all the gold is in a Garda evidence locker, in a police evidence locker, until a court case can determine who has legal entitlement to it and if any crime has been committed. This is Barrett when he was trying to put on his respectable face, and you can see here written in Gaelic on his embroidered in his jacket is Ceannara, which is the Irish word for Führer or leader, a title that had been taken by Gearóid Ó Cuinneáin before him. And you can see him here post the gold split when he's decided to go mask off and start saying the quiet bit out loud. You know, I mean, fuck it, he's in a brown shirt, like, can you be any more obvious? Well, he could go to black. So this is Belnablaw, where Michael Collins was killed. It mightn't be showing up well here. Barrett gets a fancy hat. You can see his supporters here around him are in balaclavas and black bloc, and he makes these ranting speeches there about how he's going to overthrow Irish democracy and install National Socialism, as he calls it, Gaelic National Socialism. This is from his social media. This is his Eva Brown, his wife, Rebecca Barrett. So on their eldest child's first birthday, what did they give him? You can see the wrapping paper here on the birthday card, Mein Kampf, to a 10-year-old. And then they were delighted this year, Easter again, the 1916 Rising, the Easter Rising, key date in Irish history. Easter this year fell on the 20th of April, Hitler's birthday as well. So here we have Jesus and Hitler from an AI meme alongside. I love the two-headed sheep in between Hitler and Jesus, by the way. And then they had a birthday party in their house for Hitler as well. I mean, that guy's poor kids. This is nuts. As a father, I would not do this. We have a whole host of other people, Holocaust deniers, like Gemma O'Doherty, so-called citizen journalists like Philip Dwyer, anti-LGBT sex education activists who protest at libraries like Andy Heisman, anti-vaxxers like Anthony Marudo, QAnoners like Rowan Croft, the Society of St. Pius X. Look, all these people would deny the label far right, but I think it is applicable. We get people like Niall McConnell here from Donegal, whose party is called Síl na hÉireann, which, depending on your translation in Gaelic, either means the seed of the Irish, the race of the Irish, or the ejaculate of the Irish, because none of these people actually speak the Irish language. And here you can see him with Nick Griffin, former head of the BNP, and Jim Dowson, formerly of the BNP and Britain First as well. So there are links there between the Irish right and the British far right. You can see here, this is some of the stuff Niall has on sale on his website. Make Ireland Catholic Again, basically MAGA style hats, and a blue t-shirt celebrating Owen O'Duffy, the leader of the Blue Shirts. But these people again would deny that they are fascist or far right. We hear a lot of talk about unvetted male migrants coming over and causing violence and terrorism and sexual violence against women and children. How about this guy? This guy was an unvetted male migrant of military age and everything. He ticks all the boxes. Mark Wolfe, an English paedophile. Again, I swear I don't go looking for these people. They just turn up in my research. He fled from London when the police caught him with 250,000 child sex abuse images. He turned up in Ireland where he was planning a Christchurch-style terrorist attack on a Dublin mosque. And you can see the tactical kit he had prepared here, and you can see he hadn't opened it yet, but a Sonnenrad neo-Nazi flag up there as well. Tucker Carlson turned up in Ireland. You can imagine my delight when I had a book launch last week in Dublin, and Tucker Carlson and Conor McGregor were walking down the next bloody street. McGregor wants to stand for Irish president. He's not going to get on the ballot. We have a very strong constitution, and it's not like America. You can't just throw money on it and get on the ballot. But yeah, they had their interview last week, and I think he's not going to get into political office, but what he probably will do is try and become the next Irish, answer to Tommy Robinson. And if Tommy Robinson is the answer, I don't know what the question is, but anyway. The international far right have a very strong interest in Ireland. This is Frank Da Silva, who is a convicted American neo-Nazi terrorist, former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. He served time for bank robberies with the Order and so on. And he was discovered online by Conor Gallagher and anti-fascists who were doing research to be dealing with Stephen Butler, who was recently released from prison, having served 2 years for the manslaughter of his own father in a drunken argument. Mark Collette and Sam Melia, thanks for sending us these guys, both a patriotic alternative. They have been on podcasts advising the Irish far right on how to organise their protests and so on. 2018 up to the present day, I had to stop counting. I've probably seriously damaged my mental health by researching all this stuff, but at the end of 2024, I stopped counting when there had been 30 plus arson attacks on refugee, immigrant, IPAS centre. Sometimes these buildings aren't even being used for refugee and asylum seekers. They're being used for the Irish homeless, but these people are so paranoid they're burning them down anyway. And you can see this is happening broad daylight, Coolock, big suburb of Dublin City. And how many people have been convicted by the police? Zero. None. Far-right attacks on politicians' homes. Martin Kenny of Sinn Féin, and I have my criticisms of Sinn Féin, but in fairness to Martin Kenny, who was their Member of Parliament for Leitrim, when there were protests against a refugee centre locally, he stood up and said, no, don't agree with that, that's racist. We need to, fulfil our international duties towards refugees. This is his car in his driveway, having been burned by the far right. It happened twice, and he had to move house. So again, what I talked about, the blue shirts in the 30s, attacking politicians' homes, it's happening again. November 2023, racist riot destroys Dublin city centre. £20 million worth of damage done. Huge, thankfully we're getting convictions for that. Huge amount of looting and stuff as well. It wasn't just the far right, you had other people who were joining in. Interestingly, all the sports shops in the main street were looted and burnt out and so on. Eason's, the main bookshop on the main street, was totally untouched because these people don't read books. June 2024, racist riots in Coolock in Dublin. Again, broad daylight. Guys in balaclavas throwing petrol bombs and bottles at police. August 2024, you have the Southport riots in England. And that has an impact in Ireland as well, because in the north, the violence starts in Belfast, and it actually continues for 3 or 4 days after it ends here in England. And you can see again, this is a loyalist area. I don't know if it shows, but there's an Ulster Defence Association mural in the background. And who decides to jump on this bandwagon? The anti-immigrant protesters from Dublin, from Coolock, where I showed you a minute ago, go up to Belfast and stand in beside their loyalist equivalents. And again, you can see this is not usual in Irish politics. We don't normally fly the British Union flag and the Irish tricolour side by side. And the kind of loyalist thugs, some of them are ex-BNP. One of them had a conviction for beating a Catholic man to death with a plank studded with nails in the 1990s. And these guys from Dublin go up and they stand in beside them to take photos, united by their combined hatred of brown people and Muslims and their Islamophobia. And this basically is what Oswald Mosley wanted in the 30s, and it's happened for the first time in Belfast. So on that depressing note, thank you very much. I hope I brightened up your Saturday morning with some fascism. And the book is available now. I literally think I only have 2 copies with me. They're 20 quid if anyone wants them. I'm not sure it's on sale downstairs. But listen, Míle Mahagriv, Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
So if there's any questions, you can just, I think, Pádraig, you can deal with them yourself.
Super, down the back.
Question about one of your slides in the Bella Run, who was the pedophile came over from England.
Yeah, Mark Wolf.
Christchurch style massacre. But he was prevented. It looks like this is...
Yeah, he was prevented. He was staying in a hostel in Dublin. He was intercepted by the Irish police. It's one of the few times they've actually been on the ball. Basically, the Irish police have not been watching these guys, did not take them seriously as a threat until they started attacking police and politicians. Then they started acting. Yeah, but he was prevented, thankfully. Question?
The last image you showed, the protest in Belfast.
Yeah.
My understanding was they also were like seen pictured with members or former members of the Green Gang. Is that right?
Yeah, they were basically, my understanding from press reports, and I think your libel laws are the same as ours in Ireland, more or less. My understanding from press reports is that a number of the Dublin protesters were taken out by members of the loyalist paramilitaries, the Ulster Defence Association in particular, and were basically treated to free drink for the night in a loyalist drinking bar. So, yeah. Down the back here.
I just wondered whether you were aware that when we founded the Irish Society here in Bristol, non-sectarian United Ireland organisation, it was the Orange Order who teamed up with Combat 18 to attack our officers on the dockside and eventually to beat up the chair and rectify he died last year. The guys then headed off to Belfast, where they were eventually picked up. We think there was a trial. There was public interest immunity certificate signed, and we think that they've been fingered by somebody inside the original. And they got long sentences. But one of the things that turned up in their court case was a photograph showing them in an Orange Order club with UDF guys with guns.
Yep.
The British press wouldn't cover the story at all, the Irish press did. But no British newspaper would take that story. But it's an example of what you were saying about the links between.
Yeah. It's very well established, like the links between, and I mean, look, there's Catholic equivalents like the Orange Order called the Ancient Order of Hibernians, who I think are an equally big group of assholes. They're just not as popular and have never had the same traction in Irish politics. If you go way back and read Ray Hill, the anti-fascist mole within the fascist movement, if you read his book, The Other Side of Terror, if you read, who's the guy from Hope Not Hate, who published a book just called Hate, Matthew Collins, if you read his book as well, he talks about his time in the BNP and the National Front, and the same thing was happening. And again, it's not every single Orange man, it is not every single loyalist, but there is a very strong strand within it. Question?
On a general point, existing Irish fascism, what does it actually say about the unification of Ireland? Is it, I mean, you know, like they're up there with the loyalists. What does Irish fascism say about the national question?
Well, fascism is different in every country because nationalism is different in every country, and fascism is an extreme form of ethno-nationalism. So in Ireland, because we have two national traditions and two national identities, part of them are waving the tricolour and part of them are waving the British Union Jack. Sometimes they will come together just because we hate Muslims, we hate gays, we hate Jews, we hate whatever, and they rant on about that, and they put aside the Irish question, if you call it, or the border question, or the national question, as we call it in Ireland. Thankfully, it is the one, there's two great allies we have as anti-fascists in fighting these people. One of them is how much they argue with each other over who's going to be the Führer, and the other one is how much they argue with each other over events like this. Some of the Irish far-right are totally on board with this. Some of the Irish far-right say, no, this is all a conspiracy, you can't be going in with the British and so on. And even the Conor McGregor interview, as you can see there, have a look at the floor. This was the Freemasons Hall in Dublin. So now and the Freemasons claimed they didn't know what was being filmed there. But now we have the Irish far-right going, look, it was filmed in a Freemasons Hall. They're part of the conspiracy. And they're even arguing about each other about McGregor and whether he's a plant or government agent. Question?
On the slide about the anti-LGBT and anti-queer activists, is there no links between those, that sex education as well? I feel like no links between far-right groups and more established anti-choice, anti-abortion groups that we kind of have in this.
Yeah, absolutely. There is. Andy Heesman, who you can see pictured here, who's throttling a counter-protester. He's got a conviction recently. He was bowed out of politics. They were particularly vocal in attacking the library in Cork, which is where I live, and I was on the counter-protests against them. They attacked libraries in Dublin. In some cases, they were actually escorted into the libraries under the protection of the police, past anti-fascists. What we found is they weren't getting great numbers. There was about 400, 500 of us on the anti-fascist side. There was about 100 of them at their library protest against, to be honest, very bland stuff. We're not going into the whole trans debate here, but basic books on sex education and contraception. They were just losing the plot over it. And again, this is all imported from America and so on. And their numbers weren't big enough, so they invited a number of their English counterparts over. And one of my favourite videos that's up online is a quick Irish history lesson here. Black and tan is not a drink in America. It was a paramilitary British police force in Ireland in the 1920s, and the Black and Tans burnt down Cork City Library. And it's the worst insult for the police in Ireland is to talk to them about them being black and tans and so on. And there was an English protester who came over, who was helping picket the library. And when the police turned up, he went, black and tans, you are, so you are, black and tans, you're not police, you're black and tans, in a broad English accent. And we were like, guys, you're the first people to close down the library since the black and tans burnt it to the ground in the 1920s. So it's hugely, it's as we'd say in Gaelic, it's fit of fucha, it's just tied in together with the and I've no problem with somebody being pro-life if that's their view. I've no problem with somebody being conservative about LGBT issues as long as they are not calling for violence, as long as they are not impinging on other people's lives and stopping freedom of speech. But what we're seeing here is the extreme end of it when they want to close down libraries and bookshops. Question? Yourself there, yeah.
Two more questions.
My fellow Wobbly, yeah.
Not being Irish, I'm quite surprised that the fascism history of Ireland.
Yeah.
Well, I heard, of course, about the riots and stuff, but I didn't know there was some kind of coming from far. How currently, how far are they strong enough to have any MPs or
no
MPs?
They haven't a single member of Parliament. They haven't a single member of the Seanad, which is kind of our version of the House of Lords. They have a handful of councillors elected, but you're talking about single digits out of 949 councillors in the south. You will get some politicians who will engage in some of their conspiracy theories, but it's more populist, it's more reform UK kind of stuff rather than far right. They're only getting 2% of the vote at maximum, but we have to remember that's what the Nazis got. Last question from this man, and yourself, sir, and anyone else who has questions, I'll deal with them outside. Last question.
How did fascist ideology get defeated in Fine Gael, and are there any lessons for the current
It's self-defeated. It was Owen O'Duffy who was he was incompetent. He was a chronic alcoholic. He was also a closet homosexual, and that didn't play well at the time. And often people will say, oh, was Shakespeare gay, was Michael Collins gay, and people say it about different figures. We know Owen O'Duffy was a closet homosexual, that he was gay, because we have his English partner, Micheál MacLiamore, who learned Gaelic, and hence the name Michael Leamore. Used to say that when they went upstairs to bed together, there was the Catholic picture of the Sacred Heart on the wall, and Owen O'Duffy would turn it around so Jesus wouldn't see what he was doing. O'Duffy became such a drunken embarrassment that Fine Gael jettisoned him after about 2 years, and even though they had 58 members of Parliament, he himself never succeeded in getting elected. And I did write to, I consider, this is just my sense of humour, I did consider asking Leo Varadkar, the former leader of Fine Gael, to launch the book because they won't admit to their party's fascist past. I did write him congratulating him when he was elected on being the first openly gay member of leader of Fine Gael. So thank you very much. That's it.